It's Ricky of Moshville Times here once again. Now, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going slightly off tangent with this from what I normally do in speaking to bands. Tonight, I'm speaking to a man of many talents, one Mr. Hal Sinden. To be the most shaggable male artist not once but twice in Terrorizer's readers' polls, I'm honoured to meet you, sir. Also, if I was a woman, I probably would as well. But how the devil are you, mate? How the devil are you? Good to meet you.
Thank you very much. I'm very good. I'm somewhat overheated here in London for some reason. We're having a bit of a heat wave. The sun, by the way, is this thing we get down in the south. It's this thing in the sky that does certain things.
We're going there already, yeah? Listen, we only get to see the sun every leap year up here in Scotland, you know what I mean? So once every 4 years we get to see the sun. So we had a week of it in April, so that's us for the year. So all good, all good. I'm not jealous at all.
No.
But Hal has his hands in many pies, so we'll be talking quite a bit about himself, Eulogy Media, videos, and what music projects he's currently involved with, if any. So I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, this could be a long one, so I hope you're not doing anything tonight, mister. What are you drinking at the moment?
I am drinking for my sins a rather cheap Scotch and Coke Zero, because yeah, I thought I'll really put myself on the brink of danger and actually drink cheap Scotch in front of a Scot. you know, but apologies for that, but I'm off the beer at the moment because probably it upsets stomachs once you get over 40, as it turns out, which I didn't know.
It
So
doesn't just upset, it kind of adds to your stomach, especially
yes.
since I've turned 50, I know I don't look it. But do you know what I'm loving? I'm loving this camera work. You're going to have to tell me your tricks, and I'm going to have to get that for myself because it's absolutely brilliant. But it was after Hal watched the recent interview that I done with London's Corpsing. Hal got in touch and looked to have a beer in the chat. So I even had Paul Foster Dent from Basement Torture Killings on the radio on Thursday night there, and he even said that you're a nice guy. So where do they get these impressions from? Because I've yet
uh,
to see it, to be fair.
Mostly payment and physical threats.
No, the people that I have spoke to, especially down in the London scene, they do speak very highly of you. So, but on that subject of corpsing, you were also the vocalist for them for a short period of time, weren't you?
Yes, I
Um,
was. Yeah, that was fairly early on in their sort of in inception. In so many words, they had released something with Jason Mendonça as the vocalist, and that was fantastic. Talk about boots to fill.
yeah,
Thankfully Jason's a good friend, but it was nevertheless there is a sort of slight, oh God, you want me to do like him, but we sadly never actually got round to recording. We did, I think, a couple of gigs that
did
were
you have any like
great.
rehearsal tapes or anything like
Oh
that?
yeah, no,
Yeah,
we funnily enough, yeah, but I mean, it was just in that cusp of time when now I think for people to record even rehearsal room stuff, you can actually quite promisingly good sound.
yeah,
But back then, it was still in the time of I'm going to plug literally a tape recorder into the desk, and
yeah.
it'll make Burzum sound like Rush, you know.
I like that comparison. I do like that. Well done. But yeah, Giuseppe was speaking very highly of you, and especially after what he's went through in the last few years, it's good to see that Corpse singer back because they released a great EP and it deserves to be heard. So, wish them all the success. So
Absolutely. The thing is that Giuseppe is not only one of the scene's nicest people. He's also, I regard him as, I knew him back in the day from the sort of UKDM days of like the Red Eye Islington and everything like that.
yeah,
He comes from sort of, underground death metal royalty, and also the fact that corpsing is what it is with not only his brother, but it's the lineup of people they've had through the band and everything like that is frankly astonishing.
yeah.
I love what they're doing. It's one of the last things I'm really intrigued by and sort of like spending a lot of time keeping on top of to see what they're doing, because I mean, their new vocalist, by the way, is fantastic. I know obviously you listened to that release of
Yep.
theirs pretty extensively. Actually, you really did your research on it, but yeah, I mean, I love it. I think they're really onto something because it's not typical.
No.
You know, when I was in the band, it's not that I regarded any of that material in any way negatively, the early material, but that there was a lot of the kind of, I mean, there was occasionally the odd chugging sort of bit that would be sort of like, yeah, this is fairly typical fare, but what you'd expect for a sort of, you know, UK DM band kind of thing. But the stuff they're doing now, especially with like Luke LeMay and everything like that, having him in to do all that, and I mean, that's just brilliant, and it suits it so perfectly as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was just going to be like a line that Luke Lemay was going to be singing. He sang the whole song, you know, so it's just incredible stuff, incredible stuff. But no, fair play to Cops and Giuseppe, so shout out to you guys. But what about your musical upbringing? Like when you were a teenager, you didn't have your long hair, you probably had like acne and stuff like that. Did you grow up with your ahas and Duran Durants and Adam and Ants and stuff like that?
You are bang on accurate with Aha. Aha, funnily enough, I'm still trying to remember from the hazy days of, you know, there are these memes now that you get on like Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was your first ever gig? What was your first da 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 da? And I'm still trying to remember. And this isn't a flex. I'm just bloody proud of it. It was either Michael Jackson at Wembley on the Bad tour.
To be fair, I
Don't
had that album when I was young, so I'll forgive you for that one.
it's a damn good album. That I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you know, honestly, probably everything up to Dangerous is pretty dependably good. And then it was either that or Aha on the East of the Sun, West of the Moon tour, also at Wembley, or Paul McCartney on the Flowers in the Dirt
Right, what are
tour.
you doing here? Right. You realise the type of interview we're doing here? No. Absolutely fair play. I mean, my first gig was like Tiger Tails. I don't know if you remember Tiger Tails from
Yes,
Wales, yeah. So that
with a
was
Z.
my first gig with the torn jeans and all the rest of it. So I can't say anything about but I grew up with the 80s stuff. Still love the 80s stuff, you know. But so what was it that you got you into like the goth and the metal and the industrial scene? Did somebody give you a tape and you heard it for the first time and you went, this is incredible, I need to find out more about this?
Yeah, there's as much as I was saying about what was my first gig, there's something of a not so much an argument, but some
Oh,
consternation in my family about how the hell did what went wrong with this boy, and who was responsible for it. Now I put it squarely at the feet of, in terms of absolute direct influence and giving me a tape of something that, like, oh god, here it goes.
yeah,
There was a nanny for my sister called Nicola, and she had pillar box red hair, and she was more of a glam metaler, but she gave me Among the Living by Anthrax.
wow,
And alongside, I should say, you know, I'm using that as the boast point, but I mean, she
yeah.
did give me stuff like Rat, Vane, Motley Crue, all that sort of stuff like that. And I was sort of, yeah, all right. I mean, I had been big into Guns N' Roses when I was like 8 or something, when, you know, they were just coming out with it. But I actually, and that's what I reckon was the major thing. But then a subsequent nanny of my sister is 10 years my junior. A subsequent nanny of my sister's said that she lays claim to it being her fault because she apparently took me to Camden when I was 12. It's like I'd been plenty of times before and I'd seen a goth, and don't worry. But I actually think, and this is going straight into the socio-political stuff, but as 80s kids, and I would say that, you know, as ambient age between you and me,
Yeah,
we were exposed unapologetically by the likes of the BBC to programming from ITV and Channel 4 when it came out, of relentlessly dark entertainment, standard public entertainment. I don't mean that you had to dig for it. I mean, it
yeah.
wasn't like, you know, what was it, Girls and Corpses or whatever the magazine is, which is great. But you know, when you consider, I mean, for me, I actually would say a primary thing for me getting into darker stuff overall was my mother, for better or worse, used to just plonk me literally in front of the TV as a kid that can barely sort of sit up and watch the HTV Robin of Sherwood series. You know, Michael Praed, and for me it was Jason Connery that was the big one
Yeah.
for Robin Hood and everything like that. But that remains one of my favorite ever TV series, and I think that, that had occult stuff, direct Satanism. I know it really, like with the Hammer House of Horror, the
Yeah.
TV stuff that so influenced the likes of Akakoka. We're only talking, a few years later, and stuff like all your classics of folk horror like Penda's Fen and whatnot were all coming out around this time. That was like, you look back at it, because I mean, nostalgia be nostalgia, but I look back at a lot of it now going like, what were they thinking? This was on even earlier than prime time, as in like, yeah, kids can watch this, it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, at the same time, I think that I don't want to lapse into one of those, oh, kids these days, they don't know they're born. But I do think it's a pity that there's a lot that will be kept from kids, in not to traumatize the kids, but just have a bit of darkness every now and again.
Yeah.
There's certainly enough in the world, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely, mate. Absolutely, mate. We're going to move on to Interlock, but before that, and because you had all these musical inspirations at a young age, did you have any like high school bands? Were you in like a covers band? Were you in like a thrash band or something like that, doing Metallica covers all the time, or what were you doing before Interlock?
Um, Almost both. You see, my as a general point, my kind of problem within metal, what would you call it, sort of upbringing that everyone else seemed to have, which was that they went through, and this is me being a little pejorative here, but the embarrassing bands, when you're going up through the sort of Halloween and Iron
And
Maiden
now
and
I
everything
have
like
to
that.
stop you right there. I love Halloween. So you even Paul on Thursday had a wee go to them. I love Halloween. So watch what you're saying. First warning.
I'll step back there. Yeah, okay, but yeah. I think I've listened to like 2 songs by Halloween, and it was just enough for me to go, it's not for me. It's not for me. But however, but what I mean is that there seems to be a sort of pedigree that people, metalheads of let's say our generation, have gone through, and I somewhat sidestepped that by getting into goth when I was at school,
Yeah.
at boarding school in particular. And
Was
then,
it to rebel, or is that what
well,
your friends were into, or
here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to get too complicated with it. It's simply more that when I joined boarding school, a lot of my friends, I was in the lowest year, the fourth form, which I don't know, I can't remember what the equivalent is for state, but the year 8 or whatever it is, but about 13 or 14. And most of, or if not all of my friends for a long while were in the oldest year. I've no
yeah,
idea why. I just got on with them better. That's just something that happens. People's, I don't know, maturity or whatever. I'm not saying that I was brilliantly mature, but I just got on with them. One of them was a fellow called James Boardman. Now, he, interestingly enough, went on to become the editor of 2000 AD. There you go, claim to
there
fame.
you go.
Now, he was the one that actually got me into a lot of goth and alternative music by going, oh, back in the days of tape cassettes, and he said, oh, have this, and it was Joy Division, and I was like, what the fuck is this? A guy can't sing, and then realized it was brilliant. All stuff like that, until finally he gave me Sisters of Mercy, Floodland.
Well,
Brilliant.
incredible.
Absolutely. Just what I maintain, one of the best pop records ever written, even though it wasn't intended to be. But then I asked him, listen, I've got this compilation tape that I thought to buy, and it's got this band called Fields of the Nephilim on it. And he's like, no, don't get that. Oh, no, they're dickheads. They cover themselves in flour. And I was like, well, now you've said that, I'm going to rebel against the thing that's made me rebel against the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I got into that. And so Fields of the Nephilim subsequently became my favorite ever band. And then shortly after that, I discovered death metal. And I kind of did that freakish hopscotch thing of I'd never got into Metallica, I never got into Iron Maiden, I never got into all that kind of, other than Anthrax when I was like tiny, and I loved that one album. I didn't know that other stuff existed, you see.
Right.
But I very quickly realized that music was the thing I wanted, and yes, very much the rebellion. I was wearing black, and that really upset my family massively. And I started getting piercings when I was 13, and that, oh my god, my family went ape shit for that. And I used to be, and still am occasionally, blonde, and I yeah, there you go, yeah. And I desperately wanted to yeah, there you are. It's peroxide, yeah. And I desperately wanted to dye my hair black, and of course my parents were saying absolutely not, so they made me want to do it more. I figured that, well, it's not just enough to be into this sort of hellscape of revolutionary mindset, I might as well actually see if I can participate somewhat and as a performer. And my friend Ollie, back at boarding school, had a band that he was trying to put together that was a cult covers band,
Cool.
as in, you know, Asprey and Duffy and the like. And I couldn't play any instruments at that time, so he was like, well, the next best thing is you'd be the singer. So as I said to some others, like I no more sounded like Ian Asprey than I did Margaret Thatcher, and believe me, my Margaret Thatcher impression is bad. But there I was at the tender age of 13, and we did this shockingly bad gig where it was the most mismatched thing in the world ever. We've pretty immediately started writing original songs, but I decided that in my homage to the Fields of the Nephilim that I wasn't supposed to be getting into, I put baby powder on my face to think, yeah, well, that's the same, right? You know, that's
Are you sure you want to be admitting to this, by the way?
yeah.
Well,
Don't worry. Few babies were harmed in the making of the powder. But I covered my face in this baby powder, and of course, like I am now under the lights and everything like that, and the rush of everything and rushing around trying to fix technical issues, I hit the stage, and of course, you know, it's just becomes these stripes of oh, it was appalling. I've still got the photos somewhere, and there's a recording of it.
I hope you were headlining this gig.
Jesus, no. What was so crushing was that almost immediately after us were this band who were a Guns N' Roses cover band, and you know, bearing in mind that I loved Guns N' Roses so much, and the singer he was this very good looking Chinese dude who'd illegally for the school got its hair down to here, because you couldn't have long hair at the school. It had to be no longer than the ears and not to appear shaven. So you're going to look like Hugh Grant whether you like it or not. And so he got his hair down to there, and he had these kind of circle shades on. And oh my God, we're talking Miles Kennedy levels of, you are Axl Rose. This is bizarre. Wow. And it blew us off the stage, of course. So, you know.
Yeah. How many people did you play in the front of?
Well, most importantly, about 3 girls. But probably, I think, rather ingeniously, the fellow that was putting it on, our tutor, Austin Vince, who is since gone on and done some wonderful things on TV, but he very cleverly said that it was called the Monday Night Rock Club, and he said it was a closed door policy. If you're not in, and it's in the proper sort of like school teacher, if you're not in the doors by 7 p.m., you're not going to see anything else, which is brilliant because everyone got seen. But what that also meant is that the 30-odd people that were there who didn't want to see your band didn't want to see your band. Yeah. So after that, it was stuff like I joined at 15 or 16. I met up with a fellow called James Tate, who wound up becoming JD Quintus from Meads of Asphodel. And we had this band called it was wonderful, but we called what were we it was Whores of Nature, I think it was, or something like that. And then after that I joined Frustrum, which was sort of members of like Adorior and you know, stuff like that. Which was my sort of step up into the UKDM Red Eye scene.
Cool. I just can't get beyond the fact that you had your first groupie when you were 13 after that gig. Crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were about 17 at the time. You started your band life with Interlock. So what did surprise me when looking back is that you were one of 2 vocalists in the band. Was that your dream to be a vocalist? Or had you already started playing the guitar and you were writing music for Interlock, or did playing the guitar actually come later?
It's a very good point. Just a mild semantic correction. It was around 2000, so I was about 20 when I joined Interlock. But I actually replaced an existent singer that they had.
Yeah.
Now, it's a really good point with the you've really done your research, but like the singing thing is sort of I had pretensions, and still do have pretensions somewhat, to be, you know, an all-rounded musician, but a guitarist as well. And my late mother, bless her, she actually bought me a Les Paul copy when I was all of 13 anyway. But to give you an example of the sort of narcissistic mindset that she bought me this guitar and I was like, oh, fantastic, brilliant, right. So, oh my God, it doesn't work. I thought you just move your fingers really, really quickly.
Yeah,
And notes just come out. That's just how it is. It's like, no, it takes years of practice. And so
absolutely.
obviously that got pushed to the side to some extent. So I could concentrate on what I was already doing, which was singing. And I think that the people who would more often than not asked me to be in their band were doing it from the angle of, could you please come and be the front man, because you appeared to be slightly more ebullient or outgoing than most guitarists or something, which is, I mean, that's not a rule by any means, but it's just that seemed to be the kind of through line.
Yeah.
I was very happy doing that because egotistical stuff and everything like that, but it's the performer mindset. It's simply it's the front man thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
love my old school death metal, but one of the thing there's a million and one bands playing death metal. You have to stand out in order to survive a wee bit, especially on the live front. So to have like there's plenty of bands that do clean singing and then do growls. Was that always the intention with Interlock for you to do the rougher singing, or did you do the clean singing first? Like, I don't, not Evanescence or something. I fucking hate that. But was it always right? I'll come to Interlock, but I'm going to do these heavy, gruff, growl vocals.
It's an interesting point because in some senses, the fella that I replaced, what was his name? I forget his name now, but the fella that I replaced in Interlock, he was doing. Oh, I tread carefully with this because I still sort of am somewhat immersed in goth as well as metal,
Yeah,
but in the nicest way possible. Goths kind of do or did that thing where they think an extreme vocal is someone going like slightly forcing their throat,
yeah,
and it's as a metalhead when you sort of see it, you're like, oh, you dear thing. And he was sort of doing kind of going between the slightly, that kind of goth Dalek thing that
yeah.
they do thing, which
Yeah.
is that's of a style. It's not my style, but that's what they do. And then he would lapse into the kind of slightly rougher kind of voice. So I obviously I was coming in with a body of work that was existent, and so I decided that, look, guys, would you mind horribly if I rewrote some of these lyrics, because some of them are fucking shocking. um don't want to proclaim myself a Shelley or a Byron, but like some of these were just like, oh, dude,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So in order to also redo some of the lyrics, I also had a bit of a bash at trying to ever so slightly encourage the metal side of it, because at that time they were very electronica goth kind of stuff with some heavier guitars, a little bit of chugging,
Yeah.
and I cottoned on very quickly that the main fella John was into exactly the same stuff I was. I mean, really very much the same. So I sort of wanted to encourage that a tiny bit, and so therefore I needed to be doing the clean stuff anyway. I wasn't doing the clean stuff in Frustrum, the band before. I wasn't doing it in Nature's Whore before. So it was like, oh, great, a chance to be like, Dave Garn or Dave Sylvian, but whilst also pushing the extreme vocals. The thing I did notice that Interlock did do for me though was, as you are only too aware, there's the death metal lower style of vocal, and then there's the Danny Filth kind of highest. For instance, I responded to a Terrorizer ad to be in Nature's Whore with James Tate. He back in the day when they had the kind of almost classifieds, almost Lonely Heart section at the back of Terrorizer. Do you want to be in my band? If not, casual sex kind of stuff. And they had this ad there, like North London, what was it? I think I still remember it. North London extreme metal band requires second vocalist, and this wasn't Nature's Whore. This wasn't Interlock. This was Nature's Whore. Requires second vocalist. Must have lows of Chris Barnes and highs of Danny Filth.
Wow.
And I thought, all right, okay, I'll give it a bash. Definitely covered the lows. The highs came later. But when I joined Interlock, John, to his absolute credit, encouraged me to find the middle ground, which I would best exemplify by saying sort of, your kind of Barney Greenway,
Yeah.
slightly latter era Barney Greenway. It's still a recognizable growl, but it's much more speaking pitch.
Yeah.
depending on the album, of course. I mean, the wonderful thing on Napalm Death, of course, is a bit of a tangent, but it's just like they, from album to album, he appears to alter his delivery. I mean, my absolute favorite by them, hands down, is Fear, Emptiness, Despair. But that's quite I mean, it's a much maligned album. People don't tend to like it very much. But
I
it's
really
one
love the
where,
last song, Throwaway. It's just constant blasts.
right, yeah, fair
I love
enough,
that
fair
one.
enough.
I love that
Yeah,
song. But Harmony
it's
Corruption for me, Harmony Corruption.
that. Do you know? Isn't that funny? It's like another thing with like Metallica. I have listened to Harmony Corruption. Obviously it's amazing, but I think it, because we're all at the mercy of nostalgia. It's when the thing you first come into
Yeah,
really just gives you that bond. And Fear, Emptiness, Despair was like, oh wow. I mean, it was so complex. It was almost techie in
yeah,
parts.
yeah, yeah.
And then obviously when they followed it, the words from the Exit Wound, it was sort of like, that's just huge. Then as I'm mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxim culpa, I only discovered the stuff before later,
Got you.
you know, and one starts to kind of listen to it going like, oh, that's raw. You know, it's like, no, that's some of the most important releases in grindcore and metal.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, yeah. All cool, mate. All cool. I did actually watch a video of Interlock. I can't remember the name of the song, but I listened to a couple of songs after that. Definitely, the video is the best song off the album. The songs that I'd heard. So I love that clean mix where it's like clean singing and growls. I like
Thank
that.
you.
So fair
Thank
play,
you.
mate. Fair play. But when Interlock ceased, the same year you were releasing music under progressive death metal band Talanas.
Yes.
So was your intention to have them running side by side, or did Talanas only start after Interlock ended? The reason I'm asking that is because for example, I'm looking at the Catatonia boys who started off death metal and then they've just went into their clean singing and all the rest of it. And it's one of the bands that I can listen to the whole discography. But I was wondering, but they abandoned their death metal roots, obviously, but they went back to it when they played with Bloodbath. Was that your
Mm-hmm.
intention to do Interlock and just play that side of things, but you got your demons out when your heavier musical influences when you had Talanas, or was it Interlock finish, Talanas start?
It's a very fine point. It's also something that dare I say, I'm not going to say water under the bridge. I think time will allow me to divulge some of the more complicated factors of this. And this isn't some kind of, Dave Mustaine saying, I always wanted to be a Metallica. No, and I'm not, I'll be clear, I'm not, we weren't that large a fry. But into like a personalized matter, the end of Interlock was uh, it was a tense break. I
Okay.
mean, give me a break that isn't, but it really, it was an uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
Um, we had a lot of personnel shifting towards the end of stuff. I really loved the end lineup of Interlock. And we had my friend Mart Anthony, who is of Wolf's Head now, and when he was in the band, he and I share a love of very, very, very techie death. And John, being the sort of main fella from Interlock, who he and I've been writing together for so long, there was a little bit of a divide that was happening there, and that was really what I think caused the larger part of the break. But one of the quotes that I think was rather telling at the time was, because Mart and I was getting more and more into playing guitar and singing and really wanting to do that kind of thing. Mart and I were heavily into Origin, and this was around the time of Informis in Humanitas. Well, I forget the
Wow.
third. Yeah. We were big into that album. And also that was around a similar time to Necrophagist, when they were sort of at their peak,
Yeah.
dare I say.
Yeah.
And John, if I look back in retrospect, perhaps a reasonable comment was like, listen, I don't want to be just Origin with breakbeats. And that to me sounded like, that sounds like a wicked idea. I hadn't considered that, but that's a really cool idea. Brilliant. So funnily enough, around that time, I had started to spread feelers for the things that would allow me to continue doing what I was supposed to be doing in Interlock, and then do what I wanted to, as you say, Demons Out. And for instance, the Origin with Breakbeats thing, actually, I wound up setting something up called Carnum with Tom Whiston, who is was signed to the same label as us, as Machina Christ, breakcore artist.
Yeah.
We had to make something good of that, but it literally was going to be Origin with Breakbeats. But the Talanas thing was, I think it was, trying to be as brief as I can. We were using, we had a regular space as Interlock at this beautiful studio space called Berry Street Studios at the time in the city. And Interlock we had a residency there, and we were only using Friday evenings. And most of the time we'd be finished by 11, and our slot was overnight. And so we ran it past the rest of the members of Interlock saying, look, do you mind? It's just that Joe and I, the drummer, were coming up with stuff occasionally in these rehearsals of Interlock and being like, which is like, I didn't play guitar in Interlock, but I would occasionally grab someone's guitar and go, quick,
Yeah.
and we'd come up with the odd bit of stuff and be like, listen, I think there's something in this, do you want to just stay on like overnight and we'll work on stuff? And we had started doing that really before what I would identify as the major demise of the band.
Yeah.
And so it was a legitimate side project to let the steam off.
Yeah.
If that scans. However, what Talanas was at the time of when Interlock actually split up, it was going to be more like, I don't know if you know them, but Stamina.
No.
They're a Finnish band. If you haven't checked them out, please do. One of the main reasons they're not huge everywhere is that they sing in Finnish. And that appears to be their sole problem.
Yeah.
But they are just the most incredible band. But metal for metal's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we were doing that really. The reason it sort of went into the whole, let's be honest, Akakoka thing was frankly because we got Ewan Parry in, and who was a friend of Joe's, and he, quite aside from being very literally one of the best guitarists I've ever worked with, he loved Akakoka, as did I, and I happened to know them and everything, and was just like, well, I've got a lot of influence here, and I just went, oh great, well, we'll just do that, and that became that.
There you go. And welcome back. So, thank you very much for that. So, you kind of touched on it there. Did forming Talanas also reflect your musical interests at the time? Like, same with Interlock, because you only released one album and it's been some time since there's been new music from Talanas. So, is there anything in the pipeline, or is it a one album curse with Hal Sinden?
Well, I mean, it's a tricky thing, because it really depends on which way you look at it. Because if one were to choose a metric as it's like, oh, you've done this one full length album, then it's sparse coverage.
Yeah.
The weird thing is that this far on from when we were first releasing stuff in 2010, there are people who come up to me now who are saying that actually, whilst they enjoyed The Wasp Keeper, which is our full-length album in 2011, their major thing that they preferred was the Reason and Abstract EP in 2010, which is only like 3-4 tracks. But they were like, oh, that really captured the immediacy. And it's like, bloody hell, okay, right, fine. And then after that, we did a 7-inch vinyl, 2 tracks, admittedly. And then we did, and I will stick my heels into the ground and say it was a mini album, which was called Asylum, which was this clean thingy. And that was, I sort of, I don't know why I'm not into numerology. It's not really my thing, but it's just that I tried to make sure that we were doing a release per year. So we did 2010 for that EP, 11 for Wasp Keeper, well, that's that sort of approach. And those were a busy 4 years. I mean, we then did the tour with My Dying Bride, which was astonishing, absolutely bizarre.
I'm still listening.
Okay, yeah. No, it's just a bizarre experience. I mean, truly odd. And so we were busy little bunnies. And then I think that I mean, the simplicity of what's happened basically is that I
Sorry about
can.
that. I was actually trying to get my Dying Bride As the Flower Withers album because it's
Oh,
honestly incredible, incredible. It's my favourite My Dying Bride album.
without a shadow of a doubt, that is my. Uh, I would actually go so far as to say it's possibly my favorite metal album. It's because it was what got me into extreme metal.
Yeah, because it was different. Like I said, you had to stand out. There was always
Yeah.
the Morrison sound, the rest of it. But the fact that you had violins and stuff like that was just
Oh, just I mean, I know that album back to front, every word, all the stuff like that, and I go back to it now because obviously they revisited a lot of stuff with the Meisterworks staff,
yeah,
and obviously they did subsequent sequels and everything like that of Sear Me,
yeah.
and absolutely fine, love it, but again, like me saying, oh, it's a bit weird that someone said, oh, I preferred your debut EP or whatever. It's like I had to check myself when I was with my MDB first on the tour of not kind of overly fawning over this album that essentially, I mean, admittedly they had the Thrash of Naked Limbs EP before, but their
Yeah.
first full length album, for me to be like, oh, they've released subsequently something like 13 or 14 albums, or however many it
Yeah.
was. And for me to go, oh yeah, but As a Flower Withers, mate, oh pucker. And it's like, you do realize that was like 2 millennia ago. And when I've had it, when people have said about Be It, Interlock, or my first EP with Talanas or something like that, when someone says, yeah, your new stuff's all right, but oh, that one, that's like someone saying, yeah, but I really fancied your ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like
Yeah.
you want to say thank you, but at the same time you want to be like, mate, I've put so much into this recent thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but yes, so
It's like you said earlier on, though. It's like what you listened for the first time. Um, I mean, it was Obituary, Cause of Death, which I still think is the best death metal album of all time. Um, but I just don't know. I don't know. I get so many guests on the radio station, and they ask me to play My Dying Bride so many times, whatever era it is. But I love
really,
it when it's As a Flower Withers, and I love it when it's a Symphony, which I think actually is my favourite song of theirs.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. My favorite, weirdly enough, that's not off that album. I mean, obviously there's tons off that album I adore, but I think
yeah,
the pinnacle of just really abstract surrealist songwriting is The Sexuality of Bereavement. Because it's such an odd song, but it's so heavy.
yeah, yeah,
And I was gutted because I for a very brief while I was in a very peculiar side project that I was gutted never quite came to anything. When you consider who it was me on vocals, Nick Barker, Diane Pyers, Martin Curtis Powell, and James Dunkley. Now, it was pulled together by James Dunkley, the producer and live sound guy. And Martin Curtis Powell was, funny enough, one of the guitarists for it. And Diane Pyers, obviously, guitar as well, but Nick Barker. Then we went up to Sheffield to Nick's place and we bashed out a few original tunes, but nothing ever came of it. And that, I talk about being starstruck. I mean, I'm surrounded by people that created some of the most important,
wow. How old were you at the time?
Oh, I mean, this was like 25 or so, 26 kind of thing. But nevertheless, this was happening, and I was very careful not to put my foot in it because you can overstep the mark sometimes of being like, oh, tell me what it was like when you did this. What's it like being a band with her? Blah 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 blah. But the one thing I really actually did want to know, and I asked Martin about, and said, I do regard As the Flower Withers as one of the best metal releases ever, but I do think that Sexuality of Bereavement is as songwriting is just the most incredible thing. That intro with the kind of reverse reverb violin,
yeah,
what on earth were you thinking? Can I trouble you for an anecdote about it? And he said, oh, I'm a bit busy at the moment. And it's just like, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't, that's fine. But I just want to know what the hell happened. Because it was just this pinnacle moment of brilliance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
it's good to see them back with the violins and, of course, the growls again. It's good to see Aaron. Whatever's happening with My Dying Bride at the moment, fair play to them. I know they're going on tour again, so that'll be interesting to see. But going back to Talanas, was it a
Mm.
dream come true? Was it always something that you wanted to do, release something on vinyl? Because, but I'm a wee bit older than you. And going back to the UK DM scene up here in Scotland, I was very good friends with Simon, vocalist from In Extremis, and it was his absolute dream for his band to release something in vinyl. Because I know vinyl wasn't anywhere near as popular as what it is now when you released it, as to what it is now. But was it your dream to do something completely different in releasing it in vinyl? By the way,
Do you know
I
that?
love the song title, Corpse Floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you know that's a very interesting thing that you say that about the popularity, waning or waxing or whatever it may be of vinyl, because at the time of releasing it, we actually figured that it was a very I mean, we kind of did it because of the popularity of vinyl at the time, and that's sort of only increased.
Yeah.
I'm going to really put my neck on the block here and say I've never been that much of a fan of vinyl overall, and this is despite the fact that I was brought up on it.
Yeah.
My father's vinyl collection was. I mean, you know, it's going to sound like my office has many leather-bound books and smells of mahogany, but honestly, his vinyl collection was just absolutely enormous, and all the stuff like the Yes albums that were the kind of triple gatefold and everything like that, and you're kind of looking at Tales of the Topographic Oceans and everything like that, and Fragile, and immersive experience simply just reading the lyrics alone. Absolutely wonderful. But despite any kind of background that I may have about sort of, graphic design and what have you, I didn't necessarily put two and two together too much about if you release on vinyl, it's larger, therefore the art has more room to breathe. And of course, it makes so much sense to me. But perhaps my pushback is I find the audiophile vinyl purist angle sometimes is a little it verges on camera
Okay.
sometimes because it's been. But there's a fellow called Ben Jordan. I don't know if you know who I mean by that, but he's a YouTuber. But he's a particularly wonderful and important electronic artist. Now he's done a lot of sort of spectrum analysis of the readout between vinyl and say CD or digital, frankly. And put it this way, there are crucial differences, but not necessarily in the areas that I think a lot of vinyl people will say. I mean, warmth is whatever you can qualify it as being.
Yeah.
But to lead back to what you were saying, it wasn't so much of an ambition for me. Actually, weirdly enough, the ambition for me was CD, and that perhaps advertises my age.
I remember back in the day, people were saying like CDs should be burned, but what I'm glad to see that vinyl's made a resurgence, especially
Yes.
tapes as well. I've got so many cassettes behind me that have been released by bands on limited runs and stuff like that in the last couple of years. But it's brought back demos from like 1990 and stuff like that that I can play again. So it's great. It's great. So I just wondered if it was a dream of yours. So it was interesting to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think one of the questions now is, were I to be in the position to be releasing, something tomorrow,
Yeah.
Genuinely, what would I consider a format to be? And I think that's a question that should and is asked of many releasing musicians. I'm going to perhaps get my the wanker hat on and go, I'm just more interested in releasing things that are somewhat unexpected. And yes, of course, one can always make the joke about, I'm going to release on Wax Cylinder. But I mean about some kind of, can I stuff this USB key so far up a chicken that you have to find it surgically? Or you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Because ultimately speaking, what you're trying to do is excite the demand for physical retail and to make that a commodity again, which at the moment I think for vinyl is still lightly in the domain of collectors and purists, but is, as you say, becoming more popular with standard music consumers.
Do you know what's happened for the first time in Scotland for decades? Is that we now have our own pressing plant.
No.
Yes, it's called Seabass. And the beauty that they do is they put the prices online as to what you want. So they can give you plain black vinyl for like £6, £7 per record. Bands can sell them for £10, £15, and there's the profit, you know. But
Good God.
Seabass is back in Scotland, so it's brilliant, brilliant to see. So
Well, that's fantastic because I mean, for time immemorial, it's the problem has been the whole queue thing of all the European pressing plants. And I mean, did you see the Jack White thing where he literally made an appeal
yeah,
to the majors saying, please stop clogging up all of the vinyl pressing plants because the indie artists aren't getting a look in. Which, of course, I mean, it's a fair point, but of course, he is also the head of his own label, so yeah, he's going to be saying that. But yeah, I mean,
what I hate is just that as we said earlier, there's like a million and one bands, but you can go online, Bandcamp, Spotify, you press click, don't like that riff, and you instantly dismiss the band. I wish it was just back in the glory days. I remember sending you £1 notes in an envelope, sending it to somebody down in London, and then a week you get a tape back. I miss all that, you know. But it is what it is what it is.
yeah.
But forgive me if I'm wrong here. I might be clutching at straws. But in 2008, you also filled for Damn Live as a guitarist for the London Slaughter Day Festival.
Yes.
So was this where you met fellow director of Eulogy Media, Nathaniel Underwood? Or did you have, was there already, you're going to tell me that you went to primary school with him or something, aren't you?
I mean, you're not far off. It's similar to Giuseppe. We knew each other from the early days of the UKDM sort of red eye scene and everything like that. Yeah. When Damn In was Damn, and we shared many stages together, and we'd just been friends for so long. Yeah. The whole Eulogy Media thing, honestly happened as a managing sort of imprint for Interlock. But when that became more of a concern to be what it became, like a record label, I needed a secondary director, and Nathaniel stepped up for that, which was wonderful. I stepped in for Nathaniel on guitar for that one show because the lineup for Damn Him has, and I don't think this is by no means a slight, I think it's just simply that's just what it has been for so many years, has been fractured and all over the place, and he hasn't kept a solid lineup until now, for so many years. And it just happened to be they had this one gig, and I don't mind saying I was shockingly bad. We filmed it, or rather he filmed it, and I asked him, look, what happened to the footage from that show? I'd be really keen on seeing that. And he's like, let's just say I've got it. I'm like, okay, well, why? What was wrong with it? And he said, look, it's something for the archives. Like, look, dude, what was wrong with the thing? He's like, listen, you're really good at headbanging. Like, okay, all right.
That's a good compliment. I'll take that. It's a good compliment. But before we leave a brief deep dive into musical ventures, would you like to tell us your new project, Lone Tree Hill, and what we can expect from it? I think you're looking to collaborate with a number of artists. So what's in your head? This worries me.
Yeah. Yes, well, world domination and plushies. No, it's more that the situation with Talanas is honestly at the mercy of three very loving and very new parents, i.e., my colleagues, my bandmates. They are all new parents, and it's a very difficult thing to maintain the operation of a band when you have toddlers. It really is that. But my wife Beth and I are the only sort of members or live members of the band who don't have children. So the indefinite hiatus, as the term goes, those sort of terms that people always say, oh, what is it? Creative differences. Wish them all the luck in the new ventures, and indefinite hiatus. But read from that what you will. But that is where we are or where we aren't. But it should really come as no great surprise to anyone, given the fact that we haven't actually released anything in just over a decade. Now, I've had this sort of, ish side project on the back burner for absolutely ages. And it was a discussion that had happened between me and one or two other people, but chiefly my wife, who is my chief advisor. And it was something that, dare I say, was almost a bit of a retirement plan in some senses, because I don't think I'm ever going to stop playing music. It's just what I'm doing and how much I'm putting into it. But this was more of, it's certainly less extreme, put it that way.
Yeah.
And
And I got that. Without there's absolutely nothing in social media about it. But just looking at the band title, no, you're
yeah.
not going to be doing any growling anytime soon. So it'll be interesting
Ah,
to hear. I was supposed to
ah.
say your clean vocals.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just obviously it's going to be very clean heavy. I mean, clean heavy, oxymoron. What I mean by that is what I'm aiming to do with Lone Tree Hill, essentially speaking, is it is arguably a solo effort that's collaborative with whoever wants to come and do, literally on a track by track basis. And it is going to be clean, not in the sense of I'm not going to write about dirty subjects, there's been plenty of that, but more that I'm not piling on the distortion and overdrive and what have you, and trying to make every single guitar sound exactly like Decapitated. I, however, will be playing an 8-string, but playing clean, but vocally, obviously leaning very heavily into the sort of Dave Sylvian stuff. But I do also want to keep the extreme vocal occasionally turning up. And it's just an experiment of mine that I just want to see if it's possible to still do clean things with very complicated extreme drums and the occasional bit of extreme vocal.
So how far into the process are you? Have you recorded vocals or anything like that, or have you recorded guitar riffs? How far into the process are you?
At the moment, it's more about me sort of. It's a bit weird. It depends how techy you want to go with it. I mean, this guitar I've got back there, which I don't know if you can see, but I bought these 2 identical 8-strings specifically for this project, but they're multi-scale, they're fan fret.
Yeah.
And I've never played a fan fret before. I'm very used to 7-string. That's my main thing. But then going to 8-string, but then also this multi-scale thing, which for anyone who doesn't know is the lower register of the guitar is further apart than the higher register, literally the higher notes. But it means that it's supposed to be more ergonomic, but my fingers are completely bloody weird. These 2 fingers go that way and these 2 fingers go that way. So it's not actually as ergonomic as it is.
Yeah.
So when I'm sat there late at night going, oh, I'm going to make this work, and I'm trying to be like, what note was that? And so I'm having to relearn guitar a hell of a lot. But I've tracked a few things. It's very difficult to say precisely how it's going to be because of the fact that whenever I involve someone else, it's going to alter how that sounds. I mean, if we're going to be dismissive and cynical about it, I've identified that I want to be Sting with an 8-string, but it's like it's what comes from that, and also perhaps quite importantly is that if I'm going to be doing this, will it alienate people who are used to hearing what they're used to hearing from, the metal stuff that I've done, and is that necessarily a problem in today's climate? I mean, people are genre hopping all the time.
Are you allowed to mention who your collaborators are? Are you going to be reaching out to Giuseppe, or is it still completely in the air at the moment? And
at the moment, I mean, this is the thing. There's the way I really want to be handling this is that there is absolutely scope and open door policy on whoever wants to come in and do something on a track by track basis, as I say. Could be, I mean, partly because, like, from a manager's perspective, I don't want to hold together a band anymore, because it is, as much as I adore everyone I've worked with, it is a stress. It's like holding down a relationship and a business at the same time. But to that extent, I have at least asked some of the core people I want to be writing with. So my producer is Tom Whiston, who, as I mentioned before, was signed to Anti-Culture Records as Machine O' Christ. Wonderful guy who now has his own studio up in Much Wenlock. And then I have a wonderful fellow called Eric Czar, who some may recognize as having been Joe Bonamassa's bassist for some time.
Okay.
he's an incredible 7-string bassist, and he played one of his tracks played at mine and my wife's wedding. And I'm stunned. He said yes, and he lives in New York, so it's going to be distance stuff. I think I'm. It's very likely that I would like to be writing, and there's a possibility that it may work to be writing with you and Parry, who I was in Talanas with. A lot of work with my wife, because she's an exceptional singer and guitarist in her own right. And then beyond that, I don't know. I'd love. I mean, obviously, the key thing is, drums. I love overcomplicated drums. So, however, at the same
Did you
time,
give Joe a phone again?
there's always a possibility. I can't rule it out. But the whole thing is that I love listening to certain more like chamber pop and pop albums of, let's say, the 80s and 90s, where there were many different musicians. I mean, I'm talking the likes of like Brian Ferry and everything like that, and where there's different drummers per track.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that sort of variance of sound. So I hope that will be what comes of it.
Well, the fact that you've reached out to your gentleman, your colleague out in New York, I was going to say, if Copson can reach out to Luke Lemire of Gorguts and stuff like that, then just ask the question. The worst that can happen is to say, sorry, I'm busy at the moment. That's the worst that can happen. So just ask everybody. My only concern is that you've got an 8-string guitar, because that means that you're going to sing about knights and swords and dragons and stuff like that. I'm worried about your lyrical concept. Do you see a complete difference in your lyrical concepts with Interlock, Talanas, and what you're going to do with Jill?
Yeah, definitely. I really am unashamed in saying this. I am a lyrical purist stroke fascist, not politically, but about lyrics. But I have been put off bands because of bad lyrics. It really is it's a deal breaker for me. Yeah. And when I joined Interlock, there was a certain type of, well, I mean, let's just be clear, they were goths.
Yeah.
So the very, shall we say, overtly personal stuff. So lo and behold, the first 2 releases were absolutely about the 2 horrific split ups that I had at the time. So it shouldn't be that surprising. When it came to Talanas, I got very, very much into a sort of occult bent. And a lot of the lyrics in that went really, I don't mind saying, fairly extreme. There's some stuff that I was sort of like, oh Jesus, I did just write about
that.
Yeah, that's a bit weird. I've never really been all that interested in writing politically. I do leave that to the likes of Napalm Death. I'm not saying that artists shouldn't. It's more that, well, in the simplest way possible, I sound a certain way when I speak.
Yeah.
And no matter how much I can really try and insist that I've become significantly in latter years radicalized towards the left, people go, oh yeah, that guy's just some toff, and so if I start writing politically, you're going to be like, what are you complaining, you want to have the price of wellies going down, or something like that. Foie gras too expensive, sort of stuff. So I back away from that. But I think with Lone Tree Hill stuff, I think I'm going back to a slightly more personal side of things. So I think, when it comes to sort of considering the personal side of lyrics, which is obviously, really very important, I think that I want to go back into doing the slightly more personal thing with Lone Tree Hill, but I just don't know, because it always used to be for me that I'd write the lyrics first.
Yeah.
And then write something around that. And I've realized that actually it would be valuable for me to alter that, because a lot of people who adopt that system of writing the lyrics first, when you listen to the song, it's sort of like, it feels like someone's gone, okay, dude, you've got 5 seconds to fit an essay in. It's just like, so sometimes it can be a good idea to sort of sit back a bit and be like, okay, well, instead, I'm going to write something that is a hummable tune and see if something comes from around that.
Well, I play a death metal show on a Thursday night, so
Mm.
if there's enough grills in it, I'll play it on a Thursday night. But if not, we do have like a dozen or so DJs that would be happily play it. So whenever you've got something ready, let me know, and I'll do whatever is appropriate with it, mate.
Thank you.
Because I'm certainly interested to hear it. I mean, there's all sorts of like death metal vocalists, death metal bands that have like side projects where it's like clean singing or whatever like that. So um, it'll be interesting to see what you do next. What you do next.
Thank you.
But while creating music, you also took it to the next step in setting up a record company, Eulogy Media. I think again it was formed around 2008. It was just to release music with Talanas, but very quickly you got yourself a wee bit of a roster. So, what do you remember of the label days? Was that a headache for you, or was it something that you enjoyed and you felt that you needed it for your next logical step as to what you wanted to do with music?
That's a fine point. This far on, I can I will say that it was a bit more of a headache than it was a joy, but
Okay.
that is by no means a reflection on the artists and the roster that we had. Everyone that we worked with was absolutely brilliant. Um, the main crux of what we were trying to do, I mean, very seriously, the reason we did it, expanded the roster to other people in the first place was because there would the odd band that would approach us going, "Oh, so who is this label that you signed to because they're doing good things?" And it's sort of like, "Mate, that's us. It's self-release. It's an imprint."
Yeah.
So to that extent, we just sort of decided, well, if I can lend that help or dare I say expertise or anything like that in terms of marketing and whatnot to other people, I will.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, it became apparent because you see, I was under the frankly expert guidance of Steve Power from Anticulture, who we were signed to in Interlock. Now, wonderful guy, but oh my god, when it comes to errant cynicism, just absolute, or dare I say, a direct sense of realism. But yeah, he had become very jaded very quickly about what the record industry was doing,
Yeah.
because of course it was the advent of the downloads and everything like that.
Yeah.
And he was just sort of like, why on earth would you do this? But I tried it, and I think, as I say, the thing that became apparent so very quickly is that it's with all the best will in the world. You can use your client base or contacts base and everything like that, but frankly, if you don't have a dead great aunt's trust fund behind you, you're screwed. I will not use this to sort of throw people under the bus because there's no point me sort of naming names, but one of the worst and most telling experiences that I had about this was I sent now admittedly this was my own band, this is Talanas, but it was around the time that we were building the roster on Eulogy, and I sent, be careful what I say with this. Yeah. I sent an advanced copy, a digital copy of an album to a major extreme metal publication.
Okay.
And this was to someone that I knew as an online acquaintance, shall we say.
Okay.
And with everything to it, I dare I say a fairly well written press release, or the bio was there, everything like that. It was all there. And the response was the rates card for ads. And that was the moment I think that I realized that this is down to capital, not intent.
Yeah.
Now, having spoken to some people about that exact experience since, they have absolutely clarified. People who work within journalism and everything, they were like, that was not typical. That is not what should have happened. That's not a usual way to conduct business. But it was at least an experience for me to make me realize that actually what this is down to, if you're talking about really getting your new release in the eyes of, let's say, Metal Hammer Germany, or by the way, Metal Hammer Germany weren't the publication I'm talking about, but broader than just the UK, and especially trying to do America,
Yeah.
you need to have an injection of capital. I mean, I went out to New York in 2011 to try and promote The Wasp Keeper, and we spoke with, I had direct meetings with some pretty major press companies, and marketing companies that work literally within rock and metal and everything like that.
Yeah.
And every single step of the way is a requirement for putting immediate capital in. And it's I mean, but the thing is, look, the clue's in the name. The music industry, it is an industry. To think that you can do it pro bono or for the love of whatever,
It's not entertainment, it's a business.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it just is. I was out there in New York, and I was expected to sort of go along to various meetings and premieres and stuff like that, and it was a bit weird, but trying to do the mild red carpet stuff, and that doesn't happen for free, and you have to buy the right drinks for the right people.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what it is. It's unfortunately.
Right.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Hal. But just the last question about the record label then. So what would you think you would require from a band before you thought about signing them and releasing music on their behalf? What kind of traits did you look for?
Honestly, uniqueness. It was something that I I was always have been very aware of avoiding the zeitgeist in so many ways. I know that's a rather wanky thing to be like, oh, I just don't want to do what other people are doing, but it's at any one time or era within, let's say, the early 2000s when it was Interlock and stuff like that, and then going to the early 2010s for Talanas, is there was an identifiable standard, and for all the risk of using this pejorative, I used to say, for instance, refer to some of them as like wallet chain metal acts. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved Pantera back in the time, and Machine had its place, but the same also did apply for death metal as well. That there were the stock UKDM thing was camo shorts, wallet chain, and a standard band tee, and it's sort of like that kind of, and or you just block no variation.
You've always wanted to be a drummer, haven't you?
Yeah, such a frustrated drummer, really. But yeah, so the acts that we wound up sort of signing essentially to Eulogy in for so many ways terms, just really stood out to me as being like, that's so weird and gloriously weird. For instance, like, I mean, Rannoch just was so professional, it's just mad. But then you got stuff like Agonist, where it was just like, I mean, I've still to this day, I've never heard anyone that sounds like them.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I thought it was just really wonderful. And it's anything that really excited me, going, yes, there's originality left in the scene.
I must admit, I listened to a couple of the bands, Agonist, but Rannoch, it kind of reminded me of where I used to stay. I used to stay in Rannoch Drive when I was like a kid. So when I'm going to listen to some Rannoch, and I was like, that's good shit. Yeah. By the way, so I was very impressed. I don't know if they're still going, to be fair.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
They are. Well, best of luck to them. I was very impressed with the video that I watched. I liked it a lot. Lot. But moving on from the step of the record label, you also had aspirations to visualize your work, and you're a keen photographer, and you conduct video recordings. So, being raised by a family in the arts and films, do you think that this was instilled in you, and it was in your blood to do?
Yes and no. In terms of if you want to say about the inevitability of something, or I was always going to do this kind of thing, there was a possibility of that, but that was more of an external expectation. In absolute honesty, in within the family, the prospect of me specifically becoming an actor was almost a dirty word. I mean, please don't do that. Go and do something sensible, kind of feel. And so in many respects, me doing the music thing was the great unknown to them. It was still within the performing arts, but not that they'd really know about it, because my late grandfather was tone deaf. And my parents were just supportive. So, but they didn't really understand, this thing you're doing with the metal stuff kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when it became, because I went to drama school, was training as an actor and what have you, to go and do that originally before really going what I would argue is professionally within in music. However, the more recent return to filmmaking, photography, video making, whatever it may be, it feels, on a personal level, it feels like something I was always going to do.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say that in terms of abandoning necessarily what the creative side of music has given me and provided. I This is perhaps, somewhat another tangent, which I'm prone to, but like metal has changed. The community of metal has changed quite significantly over the last, I'd say, few years. Certainly since lockdown, but then what hasn't?
Yeah.
And it is very possible to feel, in some senses, slightly disenchanted by what has happened. I mean, gig attendance is different, should we say? Touring means something overwhelmingly more expensive than it used to. I mean, it was always expensive.
Yeah.
Releasing music is different because there's the whole Spotify thing and everything like that. So I found myself in a rather crestfallen space, about music. So yeah, I mean, returning to filmmaking has been cathartic, but also eye-opening in the sense because it's still a very related performing art in some senses, media, and is absolutely totally victim to the same problems. I mean, it just really is.
It's also a wee bit by accident. Like with Talanas, you had the record label, you done all the marketing for that. You done all the interviews for that. It was like, right, okay, so what can we do next to get Talanas out there? Let's do a video. Right, okay, I've got these ideas in my head. Let's try this. And is that how you've got like so many Talanas videos? Is that where the video production side of things started for you when just with your first Talanas couple of videos?
Yeah, it was something that, uh, put it this way, I became fairly aware of my colleagues' at least ability, if not willingness, to appear on camera.
Yeah.
They're all actually fairly, they've got their own charisma in different ways, and I loved that. And the fact is that we had a very brief conversation fairly early on, going like, guys, if we start just pushing out video content to promote stuff, is that all right? Is everyone cool with doing that? And we're like, yeah, that's all good. I will admit, in retrospect, I sometimes took that, it perhaps went a little too far. After a while, we were releasing more videos than we were music, so it's sort of, but yeah, it's something that
I hate to say this, but I think you were born in the wrong era. Like I love the classical music behind your videos and the way that you dress and things like that. You're definitely born a hundred years too late.
it does feel like that, but dental is better now. So
Yeah, yeah. But following on from the music video side of things, would you consider one video that gave you your break and getting noticed in other labels or bands getting in contact with you saying, "Could you do the video for us, please?"
yeah, it's kind of peculiar with that because in some senses the video that we did for Antiphon, which was actually filmed and directed by a guy called Greg Barnes from Kling Films TV, wonderful guy. He's really good at what he was doing, but it was his first metal video sort of thing. So there was a sort of path of learning that the aesthetic is slightly different from what you're used to. He'd been doing quite a lot of comedy and indie stuff, but when we started doing, the stuff that I started shooting, just as sort of inconsequential, interstitial little bits of promotional video, short bits.
Yeah.
Then it other people started noticing. It's like, oh well, could you come and do this? And that actually became. It's a little bit weird because I don't know if you've had this yourself, but one can work very hard to develop a series of contacts or industry know-how or trade knowledge or anything like that. And very understandably, when it comes to something like metal or alternative genres, which is very, very homegrown by its nature, there's somewhat of an expectation from people to being like, oh, well, clearly we just pool resources. We share expertise from all levels. So I would quite often get messages from people going like, "Hey, dude, can you send me your contacts list?" Like, I mean, like, yes and no, but I've kind of put it this way. I'm Some people on the contacts list may want to only be contacted by me directly, if you get what I mean, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But then with the video stuff, that it made more sense because it's sort of like, can you make the same video for us? So I'm not going to make the same because the way I see things, you have to understand, identify, and understand what each artist has as their own aesthetic, their shtick, their whatever you want to call it, their mojo.
yeah.
And there's absolutely no point in me going and filming something vaguely comical in suits and waistcoats and stuff like that for an act that were previously thrash. you know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, mate, absolutely. But just again with music videos, unfortunately, there's in the last couple of years there's this thing called AI. So how much of a negative influence has that been on smaller independent companies like yourself?
Mate,
Are you worried about it, or
yeah, I don't mind saying I have. I'm afraid I am a fierce critic of it. Uh,
it's
quite the detractor. And I know it's such a topical issue, but the reason why I am is because I have lost out on definitely two, uh, supposedly three major jobs because of AI. And one can obviously, and I spoke with my ex flatmate about this fairly recently, and he was wonderful in placating me over a lot of the issues and said that stop putting it at the feet of AI. You lost out because humans were prepared to use AI.
very true. Fair
Now
point.
that's, I mean, it's semantics, but it is still an ethical point.
Mhm.
But ultimately speaking, where this comes from is, again, as I said before, a lack of capital or a lack of willingness to spend. Now, we within extreme metal, you say us collectively, um, I was saying that it's a homegrown genre. It is also very much guilty of, uh, shall we say, scrimping and saving where it can, and being very tight-fisted. Now, I am not expecting to be paid megabucks within extreme metal. That would be folly. That's just would be an idiotic expectation. But let me be totally clear: the money is not, as in terms of profit and income and everything like that. You don't earn money in extreme metal. You do it for the love of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
However, often that premise, that sort of tenet, is used against you as a technician that is providing a service to the artists.
yeah,
Very much the same applies to, like, like, for instance, cover art, graphic designers and what have you. Have taken a kicking with this, and you need only look at, recently there've been so many major artists who have just used AI to do, I mean, like Deicide, for instance.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say Deicide and Pestilence, but you're looking at like artists that have been doing this shit for like 30 years, like Dan Seagrave and stuff like that, and they're like yourself, they've lost out on jobs because they would spend half their money on like a crappy AI image.
Um, the problem I face with losing a couple of jobs, if not three, to AI, unfortunately, I, like an idiot, this is entirely my own fault. I get very excited about the possibility of helping someone on a creative level, and
Okay.
I get overexcited, and I can go and write a fucking essay, a treatment
Yeah.
over, oh, I've got to come up with this idea, for this song. And I think, oh, it's really, mega excited, sort of bordering on ADHD, mania. And I go and detail the entire thing, and it's practically a script. And I foolhardily, I sent this to these artists, and they subsequently backed out, and then basically fed the script into an AI like generator, and it's screamingly obvious when you watch what they created.
Yeah.
Uh, in On the other one,
Can you
unfortunately,
copyright it or something like that? Or I don't know.
no. I mean,
No.
frankly, I was creating an idea based on their idea,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Um, Carrying on with your music videos that you've done, when interviewing Carl Willits from Memoriam about the video All Is Lost, it was the first time in a 30-year musical career in metal that there was a budget for a proper music video, and he loved the experience of being told what to do, where to stand, and all the rest of it. But how did you put up with that Scott Fairfax, though? Um, The guitarist Scott Fair. Oh, he's a pain in the ass, isn't he?
Because I noticed you were wearing the Riff Central t-shirt.
Absolutely. I was going to say, have you noticed this shirt before?
Because it's do you know, it's funny. So I might be able to say that I have something of a dynamic now with the band, having worked with them on this level, and I was so honored that I genuinely didn't realize this until the point that I was holding a Steadicam, with a great big metal vest and everything like that, about to press play, filming Carl's solo sections to camera for the music video for All Is Lost. And he said, this is the first music video I've ever done. It's like, mate, fuck off. I was a massive fan of Bolt Thrower for when I was dinky.
Yeah.
And I was like, that'd be ridiculous. I remember specifically tuning in to what was it, Headbangers Ball and Into the Pit.
Cenotaph.
Just to see Cenotaph and singing along to it and training my vocals along to his vocals and everything like that. And it's like, fuck it, that's one of the most brilliant music videos. Mate, it's not a music video. That's just footage of us playing live. And it's like, is this seriously your first time? And so it was. So that absolutely honored by that. So I have a lovely rapport because they're such wonderful guys, but they've obviously got that very, I would dare say, sort of Midlands matter of.
Absolutely.
But a very specific way of conducting themselves.
I want to hear Scott for 3 months, and then all I get is like a text. I'm not going to say what it is, but he's absolutely a unique character. But I was, like yourself, doing an online interview with Carl Willits for Memoriam. I was shaking like a leaf. I was walking up and down my hallway for like 20 minutes before. This is Carl fucking Willits.
Yeah.
You couldn't see what I realised is you're just speaking to music fans. You talk to guys and talk to about music. They'll talk to you all day. But he did tell me a funny story about that video. He did tell me that the microphone that he was using wasn't quite real. And after the first take, it kind of like. So. Need to invest a wee bit more in props, I'm afraid.
He is absolutely right, and I can say that I wholesale stole that idea, which I think was probably from something else as well. So it's an idea from someone, and then who stole it from another idea. There's a music video director called Matt Mahurin, and he made a load of stuff for the likes of like Alice in Chains, Bush, all the stuff like that. And his videos are very specific. Yeah. And Dave McKean put me on to Matt Mahurin specifically. But there's this one video where he does a lot of stuff where people are very, very, very tight focus and people are using like very small spotlights. And he put a light inside a microphone casing. And I thought, that's the coolest shit. And I was being all quiet about like, I hope nobody goes like, mate, did you just get that from Matt Mahurin? And then I put this tiny camping, those headband torches.
Yes.
We cut one of those up, put it inside this Chinese toy that arrived of a mic casing. And so I can't remember if it was Carl or someone else just went, oh, so you got that idea from David Lynch? Like,
wow.
Oh shit, yeah, I suppose I have. But Matt Mahurin must have got that from David Lynch. But the whole business of the singing, that singing directly into a torch. But he was absolutely right. That thing fell apart in the first take.
Yeah. But that video, for example, did the band come to you with ideas, right? This is what we want. Did the management get in contact with this is what we want? Or was it a case of like, come to my studio and I'll tell you what's going to happen? What kind of, were you involved from the very beginning? Is that the way that you like to do things? Or just tell me what you want and I'll do it for you?
Well, I mean, yeah. Interesting point with that one, because Frank Healy, he was the one that messaged me first about it, going, listen, I know you're doing videos, can we possibly get one? And like, absolutely, without even needing to discuss it, sort of like, yes, definitely. Then we discuss what the parameters are. But as I said before, metal is homegrown. He was very much expecting, look, can we do this on a shoestring? And it's like, it depends what you want. We can shoot this on a shoestring. I can come up to your rehearsal studio and shoot it on an iPhone if you want. It won't look very good. And it's your first narrative video. Now, they sent me the song. I asked, because I always do, can you send me the song that you're considering? And I'll go and have a think about what it is and see if our ideas align.
Yeah.
Had that and pretty much immediately was like, oh, this idea. And I wrote, me being me, I wrote this, raced ahead, wrote the entire treatment, sent it to them. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, all right. We could go with that. And next thing I know, we're arranging funding somehow, and they're coming down to the studio, blah, 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 all this stuff like that. And then they dropped this clanger on me. I think it was after the
Probably
last.
Scott.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it probably was actually. No, 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 no. It would normally be, but no. Carl actually mentioned this, and it was after the last day of location filming, and he said, "Yeah, it's interesting this because like it's a really really good storyline." And we asked like, "How did you come up with it?" And I came, it just came out of the blue sort of thing. He's like, "Yeah, because normally you see we're writing these songs about this through line, this narrative through line that are basically concept albums about this king and for my sins, I didn't realize that." When I was looking at, because I just super concentrated and fixated on this one song,
Yeah.
and didn't realize that, of course, it's in this concurrent line of a narrative through line. And he only bloody told me this after we shot the damn thing. And it's just like, mate, I could have. He's like, no, 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 no. We like what you sent. Like,
I want to redo it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm so pleased that they're so pleased with it.
Good.
But it's just funny because I didn't realize that obviously that he writes to this brief. So
Yeah. Yeah. So not necessarily that video, but any video, how challenging is it for you on the day? All the lighting and everything else that you need to do, take into consideration, but also the band themselves. Look, I've played the song 8 times already. How many more times do you want me to play it? They can get moody, they can get tired. How challenging is it for you on the day?
my job as a director is it's somewhere between being the host of a party and a stand-up comedian. And the reason I'm saying as a stand-up comedian is not necessarily to keep people laughing at all times, but to be able to read the room.
Yeah.
And uh, having been predominantly at that point in front of the camera, I'm all too familiar with the point of fatigue and going like, okay, enough is enough. I can't sing this anymore. I can't play this anymore. I got blisters or blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I think the best example really is probably drums actually when it comes to extreme metal, because I dare say that they're the most fatiguing instrument to be playing because it's so physically demanding.
Absolutely.
And so realistically speaking, you're only going to get say about 2 or 3 takes where someone is putting in a performance as well as actual accuracy.
Yeah.
And after that it's like, and you can tell, and you really can tell. And so it's a case of having to because I'd not met the guys before in person.
Yeah.
So when they came down, it was a case of going like, okay, well, I don't know this person well, but what telltale things can I pick up to realize that person really doesn't want to perform another take? And the importance is also not to internalize that as a director, and the person that's come up with things is not to go like, they don't want to be in your video. It's more that, dude, if we can do this tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens.
Fair play, fair play. I love everything that you're doing, but we kind of talked about it a wee bit earlier. When it comes to pricing, do you have a set price, or do you wait until it's like project by project by project? One of the interviews that I've done was like Dan Swano of Unisound, and okay, it was for like recorded music, but he advertised how much it'll cost for mixing, for mastering, for X, Y, and Z, and he was actually discussing the point, is it good to have the pricing on the website? Because it might price him out of future business because of his reputation or whatever like that. But I don't know what you do. Do you just look at it by project, or do you have like a set fee?
Dan Swano having that principle is admirable, but I think someone can only do that when they're in his position.
Established. Yeah.
Because it becomes fascinating. And also the other thing to consider is I think that becomes the barometer by which many other industry professionals will go, well, if Swano's doing this, I can therefore do this.
Yeah.
But if some relative upstart newcomer is going like, yeah, I publish all my ideas online, it's sort of a bit like, well, let's not do it that way, thank you.
Yeah.
When it comes to costs. Yeah, I can lift the lid on this somewhat. My business partner Dan is regularly, admonishing me, going like, "Oh, for God's sake, dude, please remember we need to be earning from this," because I'm just all about, "Oh yeah, let's make something exciting." If someone wants World War One trenches and explosions, I will absolutely film that, but it's going to cost a lot more money.
Yeah.
I also, at the same time, I have zero interest in filming videos that are shaky cam in a warehouse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they looked great for a few years, but they became the industry standard. There's no narrative thread to it. It is not interesting to, I believe, for audiences to watch. It doesn't represent you. It's just a disposable product by which someone can watch the first 10 seconds and go, I know what's going to happen with the rest of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I'm aware I will have lost out on a number of jobs because, very literally, a very good friend of mine who did approach me for an idea said, it declined it eventually after I'd written two treatments, going like, I'm really sorry, it's too filmic. And that's before we'd even shot anything. It's sort of like, no, but I understand that because what I'd sent him, it seems like we're going to be filming this for the next 90 days.
Yeah.
And we'll get Daniel Day-Lewis down to play your roadie or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just think it needs to carry some artistic message rather than simply be cheap.
And how cool was it to do videos for My Dying Bride?
Dream come true, really. I mean, having toured with them and then actually making things with them, arguably as part of the crew, that was weird. I mean, that was kind of one of those moments where
never made profit. I'm doing it for nothing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's videos cost money to make. Those cost money to make, even though obviously, of course, there was budget allotted to it. It's that I wanted to make it as best as possible. Also, I will say is of significant importance is that what they gave me with those two long form videos, the opportunity to do that was a part of personal growth. I had said to them directly, look, guys, I'm really wanting to get into this music video production thing. And they responded going, well, let's make one then. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, people are the non-answered end of 16 emails begging to have the chance to make music videos with the likes of that. So I'm very aware I got a hell of a tip off with that.
You must have been on cloud nine, mate. Must have been on
cloud nine. Yeah.
Listen, I've got, I was going to say a few, but I think I've got about 8 questions left. So I do honestly thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
But you're also involved in the arts. I wondered if you share your experience with like the local community, with like charity work or schools, or do you give out hints to like up and coming? Like, are you quite involved in sharing your experiences?
It's something that's peculiar because I think, like I was saying earlier, I will somewhat contradict myself because how I was saying that like someone can contact you and say, oh, give me all your contact list, and why would you not want to help someone? And actually, from a very basic point of view, yes, why would you not? Because I think it's terribly important to foster the arts, and I don't mean being a mentor, which I think is a hideously overused term at the moment, especially within corporate climes. But I do think it's terribly important that people get the chance to work with those who they may learn something from. Because I had that when I was making feature films in the 90s. Yeah. I was brought up in the studio system when we're still filming on like celluloid, and I was taught and put through the paces, but by camera departments. As such, some
who was your main influence? Who was it that you really looked up to and got the most helpful advice from?
Well, I would say looked at my cinematographic hero is Patrice Rousselot, who is Philippe Rousselot, sorry, who was this DOP on things like my favorite ever film, which is La Reine Margot, but Sherlock Holmes, Fantastic Beasts, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, a very particular look.
Yeah.
But I was Denis Lenoir was the guy that put me through my paces when we were filming a piece called Secret Agent in 1995 at Ealing Studios. He really, I was a latecomer to the camera department, but he decided to go, I'm going to teach this kid something. And I was 15 and precocious as hell. I was a terrible cunt. Sorry, can I say that? Oh, it was awful. But he thankfully was very aware of the fact that I was going to be precocious, but sort of taught me a lot of things about focal depth and everything like that. But when it comes to sort of, I mean, we've been approached by, I mean, a good half, you know, 2/3 of our crew are from people who have said, quite like what you're doing. Can I come and sit in? And it's like, yes, you can. Please join the crew. Please help.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. But you've also won a number of awards, especially for the short horror film Succubus and Distance. If you want me to admit something, that's I watched a few of your short films, and that was my favourite. One of the reasons why it was my favourite was the music. I mean,
Oh,
I love my death metal, but half my CD collection or my music collection is dark ambient. So it resonated with me. I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot.
oh, you really pleased me there. Oh, fantastic. Okay, because oh, wonderful. Thank you. Because funnily enough, my in creating the music for that, one of my real favorite artists within dark ambient is Raison d'être, and just what an artist. And
Yes.
his stuff is my go to like default that I put on when I'm editing. And
Okay.
so I contacted him once at the possibility of doing a remix for something for Talanas, and he was moving house at the time. And I then didn't want to just sort of, you know, contact him bluntly because, oh, I'm making a short film. Can you do the score? So I thought, okay, I'm listening to it solidly and editing to it. I should really do this myself. And so I tried to sort of, you know, create similar to what he does. But
That's what I was looking at the end of the film. I was like, music by, and I was waiting to see who it was, and it was you.
yeah,
I'm very impressed, very impressed.
thank you.
I mean, I love all the Arcana, MZ412 Rays, and Detra, and Slaughter Natives, Cold Meat Industry. If you don't know of a record label, Cryo Chamber, CRYO Cryo Chamber, it's got YouTube, it's got 24/7 monorail. It's like just somebody sitting in a train and it just goes round and round in space, and it's just
Wonderful.
dark ambient and it's just class. I've got so many CDs with dark ambient, so whenever I listen to it, I was like, I'm not more liking the music than the film, but I think it just enhances the film. So fair play to you, sir.
Oh, lovely. Because funny enough, the dark ambient thing really hit me because there was a compilation CD. I don't know if you know it or heard of it, but it was called Narcosis.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. And oh my God, I know that back to front. And that was really my proper intro to understand. Yeah. Worth finding. Because it yes, there you are. And I'm glued to that, utterly glued to it. And all the
Yeah.
stuff like Phlogiathon fish and everything like that. And I just it's there's it's I will say it's a bit brazen, but I do genuinely think that there's a large area of dark ambient music which is close to classical in what it does
Mhm.
and how the listener must approach it because it doesn't have the same layout or demands as standard contemporary pop music or anything like that. You
Yeah.
have to approach it with a different mindset. And I adore that of it. I think, well, thank you for noticing that. That's great.
100. Well, it worked for me, mate. It worked for me. Um, but yeah, so I have to ask, where you get inspiration for your videos? I mean, do you watch a lot of films, do you read a lot of books, or do you see something in the street, you take a note of it and you write it down and you come back to it? Where, like, for example, where did you get the inspiration from Succubus? And can I just say, I love the end titles where you thank play people like Viking Will and all the actresses and everything like that. And then you come away with Random Dave. Who's Random Dave?
Okay. Right. Random Davis is a legitimate person, and he, funnily enough, was a person who was involved in the warehouse sections where Sin Ariad is approaching, sort of swinging a sort of incense burner with candles around everything like that. That was part of a larger shoot for someone else, but the cast and crew that were in that decided to help out with what we were shooting next door. Um,
Wow.
I'm very much sort of like sex positive kind of thing and in defense of a lot of sex workers, and therefore I know a lot of people who were involved in like pro dom BDSM sort of climbs and everything like that.
Yeah.
What it However, at the same time, what it obviously does do is it necessitates for a lot of people that they use aliases. So, for instance, there are people who appear a lot in a lot of quite well-known short films and surrealist pieces and experimental cinema, who you'd only recognize by a tattoo, shall we say.
Right.
And there are people who, for instance, were in the thanks list that were of that ilk. And it's kind of down to corporate superstructure, isn't it? I mean, if you're working for an office and you're working in the corporate climes, it doesn't really do that well to say that, oh, and there's a video where I'm, doing this, that, or the other.
Yeah. No, I definitely like that one. That was probably my favourite out of the ones that I watched because Left Hand Path, I was a wee bit freaked out at the end, mate. I mean, she was cute, but you wouldn't like to meet her up a dark alley at the end of the night. You know what I mean? But I do have to ask. It was filmed at a nature reserve. I hope that you got permission to film it there.
Yes.
And we'll just leave that section there. Thanks very much, Hal. I only wish I could say so much more about everything that you have to go through when you're like camera angles, the lenses that you use, and things like that. I'm not that technically gifted. I remember when I was in high school, the film that we all had to watch and critique was Psycho. And I think that's what scarred me for life. But it was all about camera angles and lightings and things like that. But I don't know if you watch like modern horror. The film that astounded me with camera work recently was Smile. I don't know if you've ever seen it. One blatant example is you've got woods and you've got a road and you just saw a car coming round and it's like a good 15-20 seconds on this car going round. And it's like, why are we watching this? It's because it's the road's in the shape of a smile.
It creates it, yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And the camera angles were absolutely incredible. So I wish I could critique more about your films, but I highly enjoyed the films that I watched on YouTube. So I would urge you to keep doing them. And on that point, what have you got in mind at the moment?
Well, thank you for saying that, because I'm a little bit of I'm something of an obsessive over camera stuff, and I'm aware that I mean, in general, when trying to keep a sort of weather eye on the horizon over absolutely everything on set, I'm aware that the smaller the crew that we work with, the more distracted I am by a lot of technical things. So the larger crews that we've worked with, the more time I have to sit back and be a director, which is a fantastic but very weird experience, because I have a fear of delegation. I think a lot of people do, but I very especially do, which is silly. But
do you welcome putting that pressure on yourself, or do you wish you could delegate more, or do you just like the overall control?
It's in terms of absolute, pure, undiluted cognitive dissonance. I both want to delegate and I'm also shit scared of it, because of the fact that on one side of it, it's the dilution of the artistic vision, which is pure auteur theory and nonsense and ego. But on the other side, I'm aware that I won't be able to concentrate on my artistic vision if I'm just constantly, having to go, oh, hang on, well, when's lunch? Or something like that.
Yeah.
In the future, there are a number of other sort of music videos that I really have on pre-production, in pre-production, I really want to get going with. But there's my short film and micro short sort of ideas, as well as some features, are quite extensive. But at the moment, it's funding. And that is a real issue, because unfortunately, what I rather idiotically do is, as soon as I've written something, and my wife and my business partner really are very overly aware of this, I price myself straight out of reality, because I tend to write, for some reason, mostly in the late Victorian era.
Okay.
Why can't I? Why wasn't my hero Tarantino? I mean, it would have been so much cheaper.
Yeah.
Just need a warehouse and some blood and some fake pistols. But, for some reason, I'm stuck in this kind of period horror thing. And I can't tell you how gutted I was by how utterly amazing Nosferatu was, and Robert Eggers and everything like that. Because it's like, no, that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Well, who knows? If there was an actor, if there was no budget, Who, if there was an actor, who would you get to have in your main role, or actress? Who would you have in your main role? What's your dream?
Um, that's a really fine point, dude. I mean, probably if I were to split it into actor and actress, it depends on sort of age of things. I mean, I think Saoirse Ronan is honestly one of the most formidable acting talents that has been around.
Yeah,
If money were really no object, then Tilda Swinton, because I think she's just incredible.
yeah,
And the likes of that sort of also goes on to like Florence Pugh and everything like that, who just everything you watch you believe. But if it comes to sort of to male to actors, it's kind of tricky with that because there are people I'd like to work with, but I don't often necessarily. You see, I quite like working with up and coming talent.
yeah.
Um, Not just, I don't mean from a charity case, but I mean just more about the fact that you grow with them and the stuff
Absolutely.
that I write. I love developing with people rather than going, oh yeah, I might come into your film and then I'll probably do a Hamlet. They're like, yeah, okay. I mean, I believe me, the chance of working with the likes of Gary Oldman and Tim Roth or anything like that would be absolutely amazing. But it would be Gary Oldman in or Tim Roth as.
Yeah, yeah. No, Tim Roth, I've got to give you. I'm trying to remember the catch and the liar thing. Oh, I can't remember. He just looks at your eyes and he determines if you're telling a lie, telling the truth. It was absolutely brilliant. Tim Roth is brilliant. My actor at the moment is Tom Hardy. Everything that he's in. Is you talk about Victorian times and stuff like that and weird things. Taboo. You need to watch
Taboo.
it. Oh,
I have now lost my wife. Thankfully, hasn't become tired of it, and it's partly because I think she needs to watch it the whole way through. But I have that Taboo on like on rotation because when I'm sort of building a rig or something to film something, I have to sort of get into a certain headspace to make sure I know what I'm doing. And when I first started watching Taboo, it's like what's going on? This is like someone's gone, oh, all that stuff you like in your head, have that, and it's just everything in it
yeah.
is
Yeah.
is
Well, do you know
it's
what? It's just like your music videos. Reach out to them. Just send an email. What's the worst that
yeah.
can happen? You know?
Mm.
But yes, I've watched the season 3 times. I'm just after finishing watching it again. So absolutely brilliant. But yes, with your film Succubus and with your films like Left Hand Path, um, what were what do you think Sir Donald Sinden would say about them? Like, do you think he would say like, "Where have you gone, son? What drugs are you on?" Or do you think he would actually be quite positive about them, quite inspirational by them?
It's I will admit it's something that has occurred to me, and it's he became aware that I was into the darker side of things fairly early on,
It's more
and
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, it is because the thing is, he very much really wasn't. He was actually more. He wanted to be a comedian, and then got into dramatic acting, which is fine. But thankfully, at some point, you know how the later generations, especially the generations that went through the Second World War, have a very uh, they were significantly more reserved than we were. We
Yeah,
are, I should say, and a lot of their communication to their family is more symbolic and gesture based. And one of the times that I think I really he got it and admitted it to me that I like the darker stuff is he went and got a rebound version of both Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained by John Milton. The entire series of it in leather, like each
wow.
book is it, and went,
Do you have
listen,
them?
yeah, and he was like, I know you like these, and I know it's important to you, all that Satan stuff. So
Wow.
have that, and it like, oh God, I think you've got it. But however, I honestly, the stuff like Succubus à distance is quite arguably quite sexualized,
Yeah,
and I know that generation of people were not totally fab about overt sexuality.
yeah.
So to that extent, I would have been hesitant to sort of sitting down in front of it and go, "You need to look at this and you need to understand what I'm doing." Some of the comedic stuff, perhaps, but yeah, I don't, I wouldn't. But this way, if I had the chance to shown anything to him like that, I wouldn't have expected him to go, I totally understand what you're doing, dude. It would have been like, yes, darling, wasn't the scenery lovely?
Do you know, I'm not really into like theatre and stuff like that. I know that I done a lot of like Shakespeare things, but what I do remember him from is Never the Twain. Me and my mum and dad used to watch it, and just doing research for this interview. It was the episode where the helper put like cleaner into sherry, and then he drank it, and then he gave it to. It is just brilliant. The guy from 8.5 Optimum, the sergeant. I can't remember his name. I wish I could.
Windsor Davies, and
Yeah, but watching,
yeah.
I watched that YouTube clip about 3 or 4 times, and I was just laughing at it, So it is really, really cool. Really,
Do you
really.
know what one of the funny things about that is that, I mean, it's no great revelation to say this, but he was near enough teetotal. And so I think a lot of that was I mean, sort of slightly tipping the hat to him. It's like, well done, because he's case of going like, oh, and I think people assumed that because he was a sort of bumbling
Yeah.
old progenitor character that he must have liked the odd drink. It's like, no, hardly drank at all.
Well, it's funny that you say that about drink because I watched him when he got honoured for a degree at Leicester University. And I saw his joke telling, like Alcohol's Anonymous and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just I feel sorry for the people that are hearing me for the fourth time and stuff like
Mm.
that, just absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So respect to you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
But I've just got a couple of quick questions. Um, yeah, I have to ask though. I'm a wee bit worried about your mate Joe, the drummer Joe. On your 10th anniversary of your band and stuff like that, he drank a lot of whiskey. So has he recovered from his hangover yet? Because that's enough to kill a man. 10 men.
Okay, now I can. It's funny you say
Not
this,
apple
right?
juice. Don't tell me it was apple juice.
It was apple juice, but here's the thing. Okay, my favorite tipple is whiskey, and that decanter was mine and is in active use regularly. I sometimes have the enough pretense to pour, relatively cheap scotch and stuff like that, but put it into decanter, it makes me feel better. And I had otherwise been using it solidly as that. Now, when standard theatre stuff is that when it needs to be whiskey, it is apple juice or tea.
Yeah.
And Joe, I asked him, do you want to use tea or do you want to use that? He's apple juice, don't want to get that wired. Okay, fine. So I emptied a lot of apple juice into this thing. First sip he took, I had forgotten to fully wash it out. So it had the essence of whiskey in it. And I think I know that he was convinced that I was quietly trying to get him absolutely smashed. But the problem was, by the end of that shoot, he said, I kind of prefer that it had been whiskey because I cannot drink apple juice anymore for the next 16 years because it's just like, hideous.
Yeah, yeah. So did you actually end up going out after that video to celebrate the 10 years of analysis?
I'd love to say we did, but honestly, that was around the time where we all started, because there was one period where Joe was arguably the only person who was sort of living outside London in Winchester. We were all basically within London, but then after a while, we all sort of moved further out. And yeah, I mean, we'd all driven to Joe's to film it, and it was a case going like, all right, guys, cup of tea and then see you later.
Well, we need to change that. We need to change that. But again, this is the first time that we've met. So I did watch a number of your videos, and probably the one that I laughed most at was your super silent washing machine. Is it still super silent, or is it dead and buried?
That particular one very nearly blew up on us, and
Wow.
that was in a flat.
I was actually thinking, is it because of the floor it was on? Should you put something underneath? Or
I wondered that, but the thing is, that was in a very, very, very peculiar basement flat that was on the same. It was on the, if you can imagine, the southernmost road of a square that had Amy Winehouse on one of the parts of it, and that's when she was still alive.
Wow.
Very weird and very partied out flat and everything like that. But unfortunately, very much victim of a completely psychotic landlord who, when we went to move out, wouldn't accept that the washing machine itself had nearly blown up and wouldn't accept that the damp and then running water in one room, he actually tried to level it on us. So yeah, that was not pleasant.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, Hal, it's been an absolute pleasure. I must admit, when we got in touch with this interview, where we're going to talk about music, we're going to talk about interviews, we're going to talk about videos and things like that, I didn't think I was going to talk to you about your washing machine. But we did. We did. I would like to think this has been a wee bit of a deep dive into you and your history, but I wish you a prosperous future. But
I'm so very grateful. I really am. It's been, honestly, it's been a pleasure to actually to interview with you, because I was, as I said earlier, I was really just so impressed with what you did with Giuseppe, and the fact that, you know, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in the messages between us, I will reiterate, I think it's so vital and refreshing to have a journalist that is prepared to put in the work and not do the template things of like, so why have you named your band this, or all these kind of stuff like that. So thank you for being able to do, you know, practically investigative journalism. So yeah.
Yeah, so what does Talanas mean? What's the band name mean? I will never ask that question. Never ever ask that question. But as a final message, what's going on in your life? What should we look out for Hal Sinden, Eulogy Media, and all your ventures? What should we look out for next in the next year or so? What do you think?
My hope, honestly, is that I will build the Eulogy Media YouTube channel as much as I can. So putting out a lot more original content and also hopefully a lot more music videos. But really, that's where I'm wanting to be concentrating things. We're working a lot also with a YouTube channel called Don't Scare Claire, which is a sort of, you know, spooky paranormal dark history stuff.
I watched that.
Yes, that's one of them. And we're going to be doing another of those in Hampton Court Palace very soon. So it's vaguely sort of some documentary, some horror, some music video stuff, but it will be concentrated on that YouTube channel.
Excellent, excellent. Well, when are you going to venture up to Scotland?
Mate, I'm serious about this. I really badly want to come up. I was very nearly going to come up to Boleskine House last August, and I'm still wanting to do that. So yeah, well, it's on the cards.
If you do come to Scotland and you come to Glasgow or near Glasgow, you can. Well, I was going to say there's plenty of like hotels in Glasgow that you can. If you ever want to, we can share a bottle of Jack together, and we'll carry on this conversation, because I was so nervous for this interview, but you've been an absolute pleasure to interview. Same time again tomorrow night.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Hal. You take care of yourself, okay?
You too. Cheers,
Cheers, buddy.